I guess my first time on stage was an out-of-body experience. And actually even before that, so I guess when you're going through a transformation, I think it doesn't matter if it's physically, mentally, emotionally, you don't realise because it's happening so gradually. I think sometimes you even think you're not even changing. Like, is it worthwhile what I'm doing? Like, am I, all this effort and hard work? It's like probably when you're in a business and anything in life, like sometimes the results don't happen immediately and you just have to trust in the process or trust that it'll all work out. And yeah, for me physically, I actually, although I was losing all this weight and I got to the point where like I'd started, when working with Huddy, I was changing the physique. So I was turning muscle and I was reshaping my body. And I remember when I was doing some posing practice with my posing coach only a few weeks prior to my first comp, I don't know, it's like all of a sudden I got a glimpse of myself in the mirror and yeah, I'm gonna get emotional again. Like I caught myself in the mirror and I was like, wow, like I just didn't recognize myself and like I was happy.
Morning, Elene.
Morning.
Want to say a massive thanks for coming today. It's been quite a few months in the making. I know we've spoken about this maybe even last year when I was thinking about starting up a podcast in the Garden Room. So welcome to the Garden Room podcast. I guess today I just wanted to start off a little bit about you and I and about how we met quite a few years ago at the gym. And the really interesting thing that I find is it's not just being at the gym, it's being around really cool people. And one thing I noticed with you and the other kind of gang, if that's what I like to call it, the 4 a.m. gang.
A gym
So
crew.
all the crazy of us that have got heaps of crazy shit going on in our lives, we turn up at gym at 4 a.m. to give ourselves that little bit of a window of our own personal space, which you and I spoke about earlier, is something that perhaps in our fast modern day life, we're not stepping back enough. But getting back to how we met there, I'd been at the gym for a while. I was in my obsessive phase of starting businesses and predominantly Dorset Bottega. And I'd been fasting for 4 years, intermittent, and I was extremely skinny. And I think you and I had seen each other. I'd seen all the other people and there's lots of smiles and you can feel that energy at 4 a.m. when the rest of the world's asleep. But I think the thing I felt from you, first of all, was you've got such an amazing positive energy. And it's subconsciously, I was watching your interaction with other people. And then one day you and I just said hello. And straight away I felt your really, like your positive energy and just your openness. And I could tell straight away by talking to you that your life has been a journey and it hasn't always been easy. And I guess you and I struck up a friendship at a time when we were both going through a lot, me trying to build businesses and not eating enough and trying to get back into gym and get my health back on check, and you doing the amazing body transformation and getting, your health on track as well. So yeah, a massive welcome, and it's been a long time overdue, but looking forward to this conversation. So to take it back, tell us a little bit about you now and then how you grew up, and kind of let's just start your story. It's an amazing story, and I just want you to feel free to be open, which is one of the things I love about you and our relationship, is that we've always found that we can talk about personal things, business-related things, health things, and it's so nice to have another human that you can feel that positive energy where there's no judgment. So today, let's just have this conversation, and I really want everyone to hear about Elene.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so excited we're at this point. And yes, I remember, waking up 4 a.m. still do. But I think you're right earlier when you said energy, and energy attracts energy before we started. And even though sometimes you just don't feel like going to the gym, waking up and having a similar like-minded group of people that are there, all from different backgrounds, different cultures, different experiences in life. You find that unity and, have different types of conversations or connections that you might not ordinarily have if you've come from, so for instance, I'm Australian-born Greek, so coming from a Greek culture that's very conservative and very kind of restricted in how I was growing up. And then in high school, potentially that circle grew out to, some Australian friends and, then went to university with other groups of people. I guess I haven't actively gone out to find my brand of people, which is what Darren, our gym dad at gym often says, and that's about energy. I think that comment is, you kind of, when you find similar people and you feel their energy, you just naturally just want to give and be open. And so I'm very grateful that I met you. And I think I was in my journey. So you said that you were going through 4 years of intermittent fasting. Maybe I had just come off the bat of losing 50 kilos. So I did that naturally, also through intermittent fasting, probably not to the extreme that you went to. But that was quite a journey. So maybe I've come to learn that's probably a unique story. Not a lot of people have probably achieved that in a short period. So losing my 50 kilos in 3 years was physically rewarding, mentally tough, but that was a few things. I guess there was a catalyst. So I'd come off the back of postnatal depression through a bullying incident, going through marriage breakup, dealing with childhood trauma of bullying and being overweight, and I guess my parents being Australian-born Greek themselves, but coming from being born from immigrants, their work ethic was, growing up, they work 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. So essentially I was kind of raising myself and my sister. So that kind of the hand of cards that I've been dealt in life, for me has been, I've always been alone and had to depend on myself, which creates, I guess a certain set of issues, which is what I'm dealing with in life. And I guess we've had this conversation lots where everybody gets dealt a hand of cards and each hand of cards is different.
Yeah. And
what we've both learnt is, when you establish true connections and are wanting to be vulnerable or not necessarily wanting to be vulnerable, but allow yourself to be in a vulnerable position, it just opens up a whole other dimension of who you are and how you see yourself in others' eyes and how other people can, I guess, find themselves through conversations or just connections that you make just on a gym floor from saying hello. That's where it blooms from, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, okay, hang on. So your question was at the beginning, tell me about me. So gosh, went through a whole heap of stuff to get myself to this point. I think particularly probably if I pick out the milestones of my life, probably the last few years have been the hardest mentally and physically.
Yeah.
And I think so I have a little boy, he's 5, Dimitri, who's beautiful. And shout out to all the parents out there. Everybody always says it. You don't, I guess, realize how difficult it is and challenging to be a parent until you are one.
Yes.
And even if you do have a dog or a cat or an animal, that's good training, learning how to be a parent. But then when you actually have a little human being that depends on you,
yes,
lack of sleep and, emotions running high, it's next level. So, kind of dealing's the wrong word, living through those experiences at the same time as, going through depression, which I also had developed an eating disorder from a bullying incident that occurred.
And was that early on or was that in your adult life?
Look, in hindsight, I potentially had the beginning of, self-diagnosed, but I don't want to call it an eating disorder, but eating tendencies.
Yeah.
And so being Greek, our culture is all around food and everything, which is fantastic. But, you never leave the table unless you are 100% full. And, you go to somebody's house and they've put a spread on and, you feel guilty or disrespectful if you're not eating what's in front of you. So naturally, obviously, you probably get a little bit plumper because food is everything in our culture.
Yeah.
And it's not like it's kind of the leanest or cleanest kind of diet, all the beautiful dishes that Greeks make. But yeah, I think I was a plump child, and my father is probably your size, like not size like height, it's like quite tall, but very big and broad.
Yep.
So, and I think I got, that size metabolism, which isn't very fast. And so, growing up, I was always the chubby kid. And I guess I have a cousin, Elene, too. So she's 6 weeks older than me. And she was always kind of the skinny, pretty Elene, and I was the smart, dumpy Elene, which was fine. I kind of own that title. But, it does, I don't want to say damage, but, it kind of chips away at you when you're probably not like what all the others are.
Sets a tone, right?
Yeah. And, when you're a child and you're seeing movies and back then we didn't have Facebook or phones, and gosh, when I was a child, we didn't even have internet yet. I don't think it was just the beginning.
Yeah.
So it was more magazines and books and TV and billboards, all of those things that, shape kind of your perception of what should be and what society thinks is beautiful or right, or, and it shapes those cultural expectations of what I guess inherently are in you that you're not necessarily choosing, but are just inadvertently that's how you're molding into.
Yeah, it's been pushed into you basically, isn't it?
Yeah. And you don't really start I haven't started reflecting on kind of all of this realm until later in life, but I think it's important to start that conversation because, growing up I thought, gosh, I'm never going to be skinny or beautiful. I have to only eat salad. I wasn't born that way. Gosh, all these girls are just so beautiful, and how could I ever look like that or be like that? And it's strange how much we focus on aesthetics when really that's not what it should be at all. And, up until really only a few years ago when I did my first shoot after I lost all that weight and started really actively trying to transform my physique, I didn't even realize there was a thing called like Photoshop. I didn't realize that cellulite was photoshopped out of girls' legs and, wrinkles and, or they could modify this on a person's face. People had fake eyelashes, fake hair, and that's beautiful to experience that in that moment of time. I don't have anything against that because I love wearing fake eyelashes. You just feel like $1 million.
Yeah.
But you also know that they're not real and they're not yours and you need to take them off and you don't want to, sometimes I'm like, I've kind of de-beautified, but that's not how we should be thinking
correct.
Or teaching our children. And I feel like those are the lessons that we need to be teaching our young generation about, natural, what's in the inner, our natural state of being. How do we work through our emotional kind of internal package? Because those are the things that I guess most people, particularly me, have issues with later on in life. They just turn into this massive.
Yeah. Yeah, well, things generally don't get smaller, they get bigger, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, and I think that there's an unnaturally high bar based on false ideals about how, we all should look. And I think it used to be predominantly women, but now it's even coming over into men. So, it's a massive thing. And, I've got 3 beautiful kids and we've been through, I'm still going through quite a bit of this at the moment with my middle daughter, who's an incredibly beautiful girl naturally, but how social media actually, how they interact with it and how their confidence gets knocked because they're comparing themselves to things that are not realistic, to people's lives that are not real. It really is a difficult a difficult time for, I'd say, your 10 to 20-year-olds to really navigate. And I'm finding that especially with my middle daughter, who Ava, and you and I have spoken about. And then that leads to mental health issues, which, it's well and truly in some of my kids. And it's something that we deal with. And again, that's why I started bringing Ava to the gym and introduce her to you, so that we could, start to look at some of those topics. So, but yeah, I'm really interested to, when you went on that massive transformation, what was the trigger that you went, Elene, I'm going to change things, and I'm going to cut deep into myself, and I'm just going to switch this up, take some personal time, and this is going to be my focus. What was the trigger to actually make that change from that path perhaps that you were on?
Yeah.
To the self-image and all those things that we all struggle with.
The trigger was seeing a photo of myself. So it was the first time. So I had Dimitri, he was probably 3.5 months old. And it was the first kind of photo with him that I had dressed up for. And we were going to a wedding that day. And so we took the photo. I was holding him in my arms. And when I think it was my mum that took that photo, and she gave me the phone, and I just looked at the photo, and I'm ashamed even saying it out loud. I looked at the photo and I didn't feel happiness, love or joy. And that was the first time I had, again, taken a proper photo with my little boy, a human that I had produced out of my body. Mm. And I thought to myself, and I saw myself, so I was overweight. I mean, mindful that I've only had a baby 3.5 months ago, but I was significantly overweight. So I was probably 110 kilos, which in pounds, oh gosh, I can't.
About 240?
Maybe, yeah, just over double and a bit.
Yeah.
So I was very heavy. I'm only, 169 centimeters, which, conversion into feet. No, I'm not. I'm kind of average sized woman in height wise. So I was overweight, significantly overweight, even coming off the back of pregnancy. And I was just really disappointed with myself in that feeling. So I, normally a mother would go, oh my God, look at my baby. Wow, I'm a mother. I would assume that might be normal feelings of seeing a photo that you'd intentionally, like a special moment that, because I never had a, baby shoot or anything like that. So it was the first time, I got dolled up to have a nice photo with Dimitri. And yeah, looking at that photo, I just was kind of disgusted with myself. And then it flicked to sadness that, gosh, how could I get to this position, where I'm looking at a photo of my firstborn child and not feeling any love or happiness. All I can feel is disgust and shame. And then turned into shame about where I'd physically gotten to.
Yep.
And then I'm like, well, I don't want to ever have a photo with Dimitri and ever feel like this ever again in my life. Like, I want to be proud of the person I am, and I want to be proud and feel a feeling of love and emotion. So of when I look at myself and with my son. Mm. And literally at that moment, that's when it changed. And I think if I look back at anything I've probably really done in my life, and with other people too, I think you really need that strong, powerful why when you're about to embark on a journey of 1,000 steps, which might feel like infinity. Mm. Because you need to have that why when you've lost the motivation, or you've lost, you're going through a downward spiral again. Like, if your why and your why is stronger than that feeling of giving up, you'll succeed. Mm. And yeah, so that's what drove me. So at that point, the next day I went and enrolled into the gym. I was already a gym member, but I signed up for a 12-week 8-week challenge, 12-week challenge. And it was starting that week, and I'm like, I'm going to win it. That was my goal. I'm like, I'm going to transform myself in 12 weeks. Like, I'm going to feel great. And going into the gym, I was a bit scared. So even though I say now, I had that mindset. I'm a bit of a competitive person, but I was doing it for me. It was like about it was just for me. I didn't have intention to win the thing, but I just wanted to prove to myself that I could do what I put my mind to for my own body. I'd done that professionally. I had done that, I guess financially. I had done that like I'm an engineer. So I've, got my degree, got my house. I've kind of done all those typical life steps, which which is, again, society's expectations of what you normally do, which we can go back to that later.
Yeah.
But yeah, I walked into the gym and I was just feeling, I don't know what's the word, I guess shame. I'm like, I feel like I don't fit in here. I was like being back at school again, all these beautiful people. And I remember Ash, one of the trainers at the gym, when we were all lining up to take measurements, and he was just so positive. He's like, mate, you're going to do great. Like, I'm so excited to see you in 12 weeks. Like, you're going to smash it. And I don't think Ash actually realizes how much of an impact that had on me.
Yeah.
Because, like we were talking earlier, you don't know what state of mind people are in just walking around the street, or if you bump into them at the supermarket, like you have no idea what people are going through in their life. One of our friends at gym has committed suicide a few years ago, and I just think human connection can be so powerful to change people's lives. And, in a world where we say we're so connected digitally, I just feel humanity is just becoming more disconnected with each other.
Agreed.
Yeah. And it really saddens me, which is, I guess, why I make an active effort to.
And isn't it wonderful that, like we spoke about before we started today, that like what Ash said, those few words, sometimes it's those few words, sometimes from people you hardly know, but if it's a positive impact on you, it can actually change the course of your life. It can actually change your direction, not just for that morning and for that day, but for that month and the rest of the year. And if someone inspires you enough to change your actions for a whole year, not just an hour or a day, that's life-changing. So yeah, keep going. Tell us how. So you did your first measure up, and and obviously self-conscious and emotional, and hey, this is a new journey, and wow.
Yep. So yeah, Ash was. Yep. So you're right. Ash kind of set me on this path. Thank you, Ash. I often text him and go, "Thank you." But yeah. So I started on that challenge, and I ended up. So actually another segue to that, I remember, like you said, walking into the gym and, my first few days, I was just, oh my gosh, people are looking at me, I'm feeling uncomfortable. Like, I'm embarrassed to be here. But what I realized quickly is everybody's just focused, and different age, different shapes. Everybody's just wanting to be the best version of themselves. And that's what I love about gym is it doesn't matter where you are, what your skills and experience are, your strength, whatever, you can start and you'll be better in 3 or 4 weeks, and then you'll be better, like you'll improve and get stronger and feel better. It's about that feeling, not necessarily how you look. It's how you feel, because when you feel good, everything just seems to fall into place. And yeah, I remember being on the treadmill, and so I've had a few trainers over the last few years, because I ended up getting into bodybuilding, as you know, but I guess people listening might not know. So after I lost my 50 kilos or 240 pounds, I went into a bodybuilding show and I won that transformation division. And then that kind of led me on a path now of I love bodybuilding. And so last year I just went to London and came second in an international bodybuilding comp. So yeah, my photos from where I was to what I've achieved are like kind of chalk and cheese. And if you ever told me that was possible naturally, I just wouldn't have believed you. But people can achieve anything through dedication and hard work and discipline. But I guess my point was I remember being on that treadmill, like 110 kilos, and I couldn't even walk slow without puffing. And in front of me in the sled push lane was Huddy.
Yep.
So every Sunday morning he would be there.
Big shout out to Huddy.
Hey, Huddy, another person that has altered my pathway.
Yep.
And I'm very grateful. And so Huddy was there. I didn't know him at the time, but I'd observe him with all these women, admittedly, who were strong and powerful, and you could see the focus on their face, you know. So, I mean, at 6 a.m. on a Sunday morning, like that's kind of the mindset you have to have if you're getting up and going to gym to see your trainer on a Sunday morning at 6 a.m. And I just was really intrigued. And I'm like, well, I'm going to be one of those girls one day. Like I want to be one of them. And I guess I kept that in my head, that's what I wanted to aspire to. And I think that's the other, you said, how did I achieve what I did? You need to have a strong why. You have to feel it. It has to rock you to your core.
Yes.
And I think until you feel that, you're not capable. Or not that you're not capable, but if you allow yourself to feel it, it drives you. Like it's just...
You have to almost get to a really, really painful position to make that change that is extremely difficult to make. But part of the reason why you've always inspired me and why I'm loving to have these conversations with lots of other beautiful humans is that nothing good comes out of the light. It comes out of the dark. It comes out. It has to start somewhere, and it's almost like you have to be completely broken to rebuild. And if you're always cruising along somewhere that's comfortable and easy, change doesn't happen. And if it does, it's very, very slow. Where if you rebuild yourself from the darkness and from the pain, it's a different fuel. It moves you differently to anything else. And that's what I've seen in my time to be in our friendship. And that's one of the things that's totally inspired me. And I was talking to Carlin before this, and I just said, it's your energy and me knowing about, you know, your life and knowing a little bit about you and your background, and just seeing that how you just make a decision. You made a decision that day based upon, I see something about myself I don't like, and I'm just going to fucking fix it. And then putting that shit in, putting that hard work in. And it's not just a day or a month, it's years. No. You've put years in so far. So how did you feel when you go to the London and you, like, it must be like surreal, you know? It's only a few years.
Yeah, it literally was well, I guess my first time on stage was an out of body experience. And actually even before that, so I guess when you're going through a transformation, I think it doesn't matter if it's physically, mentally, emotionally, you don't realize, because it's happening so gradually. I think sometimes you even think you're not even changing. Like, is it worthwhile what I'm doing? Like, am I, you know, all this effort and hard work? It's like probably when you own a business and anything in life, like sometimes the results don't happen immediately, and you just have to trust in the process, or trust that it'll all work out. And yeah, for me physically, I actually, although I was losing all this weight, and I got to the point where, like, I'd started, when working with Huddy, I was changing the physique. So I was turning muscle and I was reshaping my body. And I remember when I was doing some posing practice with my posing coach only a few weeks prior to my first comp, I don't know, it's like all of a sudden I got a glimpse of myself in the mirror, and yeah, I'm going to get emotional again. Like, I caught myself in the mirror and I was like, wow, like I just didn't recognize myself. And like I was happy and I was confident and I was moving my body in a way that I had never thought I could. And obviously I was looking at my body going, wow, what a body I've created. Yeah. And I remember it was a really lovely and special moment, and I started to get emotional because I'm a very emotional person. Yep. And yeah, Mel, my posing coach, she was just like, gosh, girl, like you've done such an amazing job. And I remember texting Huddy that afternoon and I'm like, thank you for everything that you've helped me with. I just don't recognize who I am. And I think that's when you have those, not that that was a small win for me, that was a massive win, but allowing yourself to have or celebrate smaller moments. I mean, that at that point, my goal was obviously to get on stage, so I still had a few more weeks of work to do, which is the hardest in terms of bodybuilding comp. But it's important to, and this is what I've realized now, it's important to know that to get to wherever it is you're going, to break it down into those small components and to allow yourself to feel whatever it is you need to feel and celebrate and that, you know, where you are at that moment in time, because that's special. It's not necessarily about the destination. It's about the journey and the experiences that you have and the people that you meet and learning about your repertoire as a person, your emotions and who you are as a person. Like, I feel like, yeah, that is really missing in everybody. Like, nobody talks about it. And it's such an enriching part of our life, and it's important because we're social creatures and we're all emotional, really, some a lot more than others. Yeah. But when you can share experiences with people, good, bad, happy, sad, it brings you together and it makes you feel more whole, I think, as a person. But yeah, stepping on stage has been an incredible experience. And I remember joking with Hattie, I'm like, I'm going to step on, my goal. Like, I think he thought I was joking. I'm like, in 2 years, I'll go compete internationally. And I remember I know he thought it was just a fly-off comment because I'm typical for saying pie in the sky stuff.
Positive, yeah.
Yeah, positive.
Yeah.
But you got to reach for the stars, right?
You have to.
You have to.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
what's the point? Otherwise,
we only have one life.
Yeah.
And like we've got to live it. And I don't want to be on my deathbed and have not that I don't have regrets, but to take leaps of faith and to step through the darkness when you're fearful or extremely sad or ashamed or feeling guilty, like walking down that path will make you stronger as a person. And with every step, you'll gain more momentum. And who knows where you'll end up. Yeah. And, if somebody told me I'd be competing in London internationally, I would have been like, no, you're crazy. Yeah. And I guess, it's been a special part of my life so far. And gym is part of me, and I'm so grateful that I've for all of my trainers and mentors that I've had to help me learn. So I think another thing we've talked about earlier is education and knowledge is power, and the more you can acquire for yourself and learn how to apply it for yourself. And for me, being mindful of nutrition, so food and physical well-being, so resistance training, strength, flexibility, those things are really important to me now. Not that they weren't important, but maybe when you're not good at things or they don't
you're
come.
prioritizing it now, right?
Prioritizing it. But when you're not good at something, you tend to not focus on it. Sure.
Yeah, that's part of part of the softness that our current society is developing, is that people are, if things get a little bit hard or they get a little bit painful or you see something you don't like, people want to complain or they want to make an excuse. I find that the biggest change comes from doing the things that you don't want to do, or the things that you thought you didn't have to do or you shouldn't have to do. When you do them, it's kind of like reinvent you. And tell me about, there's such a strong connection being scientifically proven now that connects this with this. So the body and the mind, right? So how has you having some trauma and attacking your body, and how's that because of the discipline it takes to be backing up morning after morning and night after night for your training and your nutrition and your eating and just putting all those things in on top of being a mum and on top of having a high level job and on top of being a woman and all these things. Tell me how you've felt that sort of that mindset's changed for you about getting to your mind perhaps through that discipline of consistent physical activity.
So I said earlier I was coming off the back of depression. So I was at a point had really severe anxiety.
Yeah.
So before we met, I was having multiple panic attacks in the middle of the night. The first time it happened, we actually called the ambulance because I thought I was having a heart attack. So that was off the back of a bullying incident, plus my postnatal depression and kind of all the rest of it. So I was at a point in my life where I was waking up in the middle of the night having a panic attack, and then they turn into multiple panic attacks. And then I got to the point where I would have a really severe anxiety attack before dinner, like before bedtime, because I knew I was getting anxious to go to bed because I knew I'd wake up and have, like, literally in the middle of the night, I'd wake up thinking I was dying, like my chest was just like constricting and I was sweating and couldn't breathe, and I just would think I was about to die.
Yeah.
And so in the middle of the night, and then it started before bed and then before dinner. So I was like a mess come 6 o'clock every night. And I guess, and I said earlier, growing up, food is everything in our culture. So I had a tendency to eat a lot emotionally. My default setting is just, let's go eat chocolate. Like, I love chocolate and ice cream. Like that emotionally gets me to a happy place, but
yeah,
the guilt's afterwards awful, and it's not a healthy way to be. But in the middle of all these anxiety attacks, I developed pneumonia, and I was really unwell. So mental health wise, I was just a mess. And then I was eating and then had pneumonia, and then pneumonia is like, the chest infection where you're coughing and coughing and coughing. So this combination of eating a lot and then coughing a lot, I then was vomiting a lot because I would be eating so much to deal with, my depression and all the stuff I was going through with my marriage and with work and mum and like with life, I guess. I wasn't coping in life at all whatsoever. And then I kind of developed this bulimia tendency, and then I learned how to self-induce vomiting. And so then I was kind of in this awful place where I was, just a huge mess. I think, my psychologist, I ended up seeking professional help, and he's like, you need to do something to focus. You have to get the adrenaline out of your body every day. And so you need to do something physically active that will just help you escape and take back control of something in your life. And then that's when I went to, Huddy. I went to Huddy and I wanted to do, I didn't want to do a bodybuilding show, but I just knew I needed help to have a structured program. So something I could follow, something that I didn't have to think about.
Yeah.
So something somebody else was telling me what to do essentially, but all that I had to do was follow it. And because I had obviously been observing him with all of these women, their transformations, I'm like, you've got the recipe. So I was kind of like doing a few things and, killing a few birds with one stone. But it was all good timing. So mentally I just gym and so he gave me a structured meal program, a structured gym program, and that was what I needed to just really focus. Like I became obsessed, not in a bad way, but a good way, because I was in control of that part of my life. I was, not that I choose to wake up at, 3:45 in the morning. It's, if I had my way, I'd just sleep in and, not work and do it a reasonable hour. But, I had to come up with ways of, if I wanted to feel better for myself, if I needed to do this for myself and walk through the darkness, right? Like it's going to be hard work. Anybody, if you have success in whatever domain of your life, it doesn't come by fluke. It's not luck.
No.
It's through sheer will and hard work and consistency. And so that's kind of the journey that I started on.
And did that really help? Did that by giving you something else to focus on?
Yeah, I often would say it to Huddy. I'm like, thank you for helping me escape my reality.
Yeah.
It literally was the respite that I needed, the few hours a week just to check out, essentially. And I guess you see that in society, right? People do that in different ways.
Yeah.
Some people turn to alcohol. Some people turn to drugs.
Yeah.
Some people like reading books. Some people listen to music. Some people do gardening. Some people have art. Everybody has a way that they like to switch off and tune out. But potentially as we get older and the pressures of life become harder, and I think it's your expectations become more of yourself. And now I think back and go, well, why am I feeling this pressure? And where has it come from? And often it's like, well, it's because back when I was a kid, that's what people do. That, graduate, get a job, get married, get a house, rah, rah, rah. And so it's really, I feel like whenever you're having challenges in life or you're questioning where you are or what you're doing or comparing yourself, which humans are really, typical, we're all known for doing that. You compare yourself to others constantly. I think it's just a really good time to check in and go, well, dig deep and understand where is that coming from? And really, is that at me as a person? Do I value that train of thought, or is that how I really feel about, I don't know, whatever example it might be in your life? Really understand and take it apart and go, do I agree with that? Is that just from me? Is that just with me from childhood? Is it because my friends think that way? Is it because my parents brought me up that way? Now that I'm my own independent human being, what do I stand for and what do I want? And, how do I want to act as a person, and what kind of legacy do I want to give? Not just, to Dimitri, my son, but, if I run into that person at the supermarket, or if I meet this person and have a quick conversation with them at work, like, as a human being, what ripple effect do I want to create in the universe? And yeah, I guess the last few years, the gym, not only has helped me escape, but has helped me find myself.
That's so beautiful. It's and look, from my point of view, one thing I noticed that you're like a magnet. So especially for the if I digress back to a few years ago to our little 4 a.m. club, the 4 a.m. club was only cohesive because you were like the sphere in the middle and your ball of energy, and you give everyone positive comments, you interact, you include, you're very inclusive, which is an amazing personal trait to have as a human. And if there was a breakfast to be organised or a get-together or a catch-up, you were the one to instigate it. And I think that is the ripple effect that you're talking about. And I'm not sure how you've always been, but I can tell you now that the effect that you have on not just yourself, but those people around you is 100% positive. And that, I think, the respect that you earn from people is not just from your energy, but it's your willingness to be honest and open and to talk about things and saying, like, everyone's got a starting point and this is how we're moving through. We're all moving through together at different rates, and understanding and I guess supporting each other through that without judging. Good criticism is fantastic, but judging people is different. And I think one of the things that drew me to you and why we've continued to stay in touch, even though now we train at different gyms, is that once you have that connection and you feel that person's energy, and that energy that you have is, I guess, been transformed and molded over the last few years, that you've found a really happy place, like with your training and your body connection, and you're feeling better. I want to say great job, and just, you know, it means a lot to me as well to see the journey you've been on and just to be really happy. But I know you've had heaps of other shit go on, so, you know, feel free, because, you know, what we're really trying to do in these conversations for our audience is just to be really open and honest, and what you've, you know, so far it's been amazing, and I guess it's just so important for us, because if people can listen and even pick out one or two pieces that they think that they connect with. So, and remember, it's not where you start, it's where you're heading to, and put that plan into place. You know, like I know for myself, you know, like I was 20 kilos lighter than I am now because I wasn't eating, and I wasn't eating because I was obsessed with business. And my reason to succeed was far greater than myself. For me to be able to, I guess at certain times in our lives, we put other things at the dominant end of our life. And I think it's really nice to then reconnect. And at certain times we need to sort of forgo ourselves a little bit to get to certain areas, but then we need to re-find ourselves, which is what I think you and I have both done over the last few years, and then put back that little bit of personal time and that little bit of self-love, right? That tends to get thrown away sometimes when you get married and you got business and jobs and kids, and it's just putting that back. And I guess your journey is just, it's such a normal human journey, but just people just won't talk about it, you know, like for fuck's sake, like we're all flawed, we've all got our problems, and, you know, like that should be not something that we kick under the carpet and don't tell people about. It should be like, that's what makes us human. That's what makes us real, right? Whether you've got a really depressing feeling or a really happy feeling, we should still be really fortunate that we, in some case, that we're alive enough to actually have the feeling, right? Because when you're given the opportunity to not have those feelings anymore, it's really all we have, right? Is these beautiful things that we take away. And that feeling that we felt when we did a certain thing, or we saw a person, or we listened to music. And I think like in our new society with the social media, it's less about feeling, more about visual. And that visual doesn't always reflect a positive feeling for the people who are watching it, because it looks perfect or it looks unattainable. And I think we need to get back to that real journey and talk about those journeys, and support our friends and our family and our colleagues at work who are on those journeys, because everyone's on a fucking journey. Just people just don't talk about it. And I know you went to see David Goggins and you were just blown away. And, you know, you and I both loved David Goggins for so many years. And, you know, he talks about that as well, that everyone's got bullshit. Everyone just kicks their shit under the carpet. And the sooner you come clean, and the sooner you look at the things like you said and go, hang on a minute, why am I feeling like this? What's not the Band-Aid? It's not the bottle of wine, or it's not, you know, trying to bury myself in this or that. Why am I feeling this way? Let's go right back to the nitty gritty, and let's fucking find the reason, and let's try and fix it, because that's the hardest thing to do. But really, that's the only thing to do. Otherwise, we're lying to ourselves. And if you lie to yourself, you're lying to everyone around you, right? Because you're not being real. It's a masquerade.
Yeah, I think the hardest place is to find and be your authentic self. And we all have different facets of ourselves. And I think situations and different people will bring out your different facet, which is a beautiful thing about life, right? Like, you don't have to be that one thing all the time. And, you know, it was like your beautiful flowers, right? Like, they'll turn towards the sun and they'll grow in a certain way. And that's how I think, as a human being, if you're open to those experiences, and if you're open to different people bringing different things in your life and feeling those different things, because it's like it's a cake. You know, you need eggs, you need milk, you need sugar, you need flavoring. You know, without all of those things, you'll never have a beautiful end dessert.
Yeah.
It's like life. You can't just always be happy. You can't always be sad. You can't always, you know, I guess potentially you might be always rich. I haven't lived that life yet, but, you know, if you well, you see it, potentially people that are very wealthy, they're still not happy. That, you know, a huge bank account doesn't mean that you're extremely happy all the time. Some of them billionaires might be the loneliest men or loneliest women in the world.
Yes.
And what is the bottom, I guess not bottom dollar, it's a bad analogy right now to use, but it's that human connection. Back in caveman days, all they had was each other, and the skin of an animal that they would have killed.
Yeah.
And that's where we've evolved from. And, I've done a bit of traveling, and in third world countries, they are living in corrugated iron shacks. But you observe them as a community, and I've never seen such raw, true connection and love in these villages. And I come back home and, to my own little house with a white picket fence, and, I think, gosh, I'm like, you're a prisoner in kind of your own castle sometimes. And I guess that's what we probably should be mindful of as a society. Like, it starts from even your just little everyday interactions to start building up that kind of muscle in yourself, that social muscle potentially, to say hello to a neighbor or say hello to a stranger as you walk by and give them a smile. And it's not just necessarily the smile, it's that energy of warmth, like wishing people well or being there when they're going through something tough.
Yeah. Or
having the ability to have a hard conversation. I've had some friends who I've considered, exceptionally important in my life, and I love them, but I've had to say things to them that I know would that I knew they potentially wouldn't receive well. But I guess my love for them was stronger than my love for them and wanting them to be happy and grow as a person, and was stronger than, or I was willing to sacrifice that relationship in order for them to, because I just knew they weren't getting it from any. Oh, sorry, I've just tapped that. I knew they wouldn't get it. They weren't getting it from anywhere else. Like, nobody had the courage to say things to them. And I guess, it's those instances of raw truth and authenticity that you learn who you are as a person.
Yeah.
And I pray that and hope for people that they get to that place where they're comfortable with who they are and comfortable that not everybody needs to like you or agree with you, or, you are in your own body. You're the one with your own thoughts all the time. The only person you can truly, truly rely on all the time is you and your actions. So strengthening whatever it is that's in your power, your body, your mind, your soul, your emotions, is important to live the fullest life you possibly can have. And to help others when they might need it, to be a bouncing board when they've got these great, business ideas, and to help give energy or guidance to particularly, teenagers or a child or a friend that has lost their way. Yeah, I think taboo topics are just, it's getting more and worse and worse. Like, we're becoming so politically correct about so many things. And, if your heart's in the right place and you're generally coming from a place of warmth and love, I feel like, if you're getting offended easily by things, sometimes it's better to just pop yourself in the other person's shoes and, really just and learn to reflect. I guess that's what I've been trying to do with myself lately, because, I wear my heart on my sleeve, and I'm typically the person that will give the hard truths and have the hard conversations, and knowing that, maybe that person's not going to be happy with me.
Yeah.
But when I feel like, if your heart is in the right place, whenever you're dealing with challenging aspects of your life, or somebody's coming to you, or you're noticing something, those are the human connection points, and how we can all help each other reach that maybe next level. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, look, I think absolutely. And, you and I have spoken probably a few years ago now about, when we were talking about specifically about young girls and mental and body issues, and there's so much anxiety, there's so much pressure out there, and as I said earlier, we've been going through some stuff with my middle daughter, and you and I spoke about, I guess the background goes back to there really isn't, even in education today and even in the school system, they don't teach the kids about the realities of being true to yourself and the self-love and, your self-image and how do you deal with this. And these are the issues that are going to come up. And you and I have spoken quite at length about the possibility of starting up some type of, and you can elaborate a little bit, of like workshops to try and get into, especially those young, specifically girls, because obviously there's a strong connection there with you and what you've been through and what I see with my beautiful daughters, to try and set up a platform and almost like a program that does connect the mind and body and allows openness and sharing, and it also has some real world values in there about this is what this track will, if you go down this track, this is how you'll end up. And if you make these few small changes, I don't think there's enough of that. I think that there's too much broad spread, simple stuff that's been around, and it's decades old now. The whole world has changed with the internet. So, and with social media specifically, especially for and I will say for young ladies. So I feel that there's an opportunity there, and I'd love to, you can talk a little bit more about it now, about how you feel about what we can do from the journeys that we've all been on to try and help our younger generation also to be more prepared and to go to war, so to speak, and control their own lives and have a better self-opinion of themselves, not judge themselves and those people around them. Tell me what your thoughts are.
Yes. So I have been dwelling on, my project for the soul is to create some kind of foundation or program targeted at adolescent youth, specifically girls, to help them lead a fearless life.
Yes.
I think that's what the crux of it is, and how you can have an internal, how you shine brightly internally. And specifically with young females, all of the influences that they're getting in life at the moment aren't reality.
No, they're external.
They're external. It's not sustainable. And so having, I agree, some kind of platform. So developing a program, a vacation program where young girls can either come online or attend in person and run through a series of workshops or modules based on physical health, mental health, emotional health. And I agree, discuss in a safe space what potentially they might be going through at that period of their life without judgment, but with, I guess, a real a perspective that is from a real place, and dealing with the hard truths that no, life isn't going to be perfect. Things aren't always going to go your way. There's going to be times where you're in trouble, or, potentially it might be your money, it might be health, it might be a relationship, whether it be family or friends or a boyfriend or a girlfriend. Things are going to go wrong in your life, and teaching them how to deal with it. And I guess our education system now is all about the academic and sporting aspects. And, a lot of schools are building resilience programs and things like that. But I think as a parent, you only have so much time, and some topics are quite sensitive to tackle with, that parent-child relationship. And at school, it's hard in a parent-teacher environment. So I think there's a real gap where our teenagers and kids need a facilitated forum to help work through those those really tough life subjects that none of us really ever talk about. And I think about my own little boy now at 5 years old. We had a prep orientation for him only a few weeks ago. And one of the dot points is of what the key learnings are for him next year is, you know, to learn how to self-regulate and learn to identify poor behavior and apologize when you're wrong. I'm like, that's fantastic.
It is.
At 5 years old, this is what my little boy is going to be learning. But what I fear is going to happen is as he progresses through the schooling system, there's going to be a point where that bullet point is just dropped off.
Yes, that falls away.
It falls away because...
Right when they need it the most.
When they need it the most. And the assumption is potentially you've learnt it, so then stop. You don't need to learn it anymore. But that is so not the case. I mean, most of us know what to do to lose weight.
Yep.
Stop eating junk, start exercising, guarantee you'll find results. But you just don't practice it. So why is behavioural and emotional and real life subjects any different? We should be creating environments for our teenagers to tackle those hard problems that families at home don't have time to do, that teachers don't, you know, it's probably outside of their scope of practice to be facilitating. And that's what I want to do. I want to create those environments and hopefully potentially, you know, get them rolled out at a national level and potentially in all the public schools as a separate stream, like, I don't know, like a life stream. Still the wheels are turning on how to do that.
Yep.
But it's definitely an apparent need. And as we said earlier, how you're molded as a young human, it stays with you, like all your childhood trauma. And then potentially if, you know, you're dealing with teenage trauma, some, you know, potentially kids have moved out of home or they've, you know, got into drugs or alcohol or fighting, violence. There's so many variables on that. And to create an avenue to help them, again, even if it's just for a moment, so that they know they've got that light somewhere in their life to think back on and go, no, there is somewhere for me to go and to discuss and to learn that's safe. And even if it's just for that 1 hour a week or the 3 days of that school holidays, they've experienced that. And then when the time comes, they'll be able to draw back on it.
Yeah. I think having it through a third party too sometimes helps because families are strangely set up. We're strangers, humans, that sometimes we'll take advice from a complete stranger, but we won't take it from someone who loves us the most. So you and I spoke about that perhaps we would run a short pilot at some stage with my middle daughter and her friend group just to kind of gauge to see what it would look like and get the feedback from a closed environment, so to speak, where it's an honest approach. So I guess I'm kind of excited. I haven't forgotten about that and our conversations around that because I have two, Will and Ava, you know, both in their mid-teens, and it's so relevant about that how things have changed and I won't say more pressure, but different pressures and more negative pressures from the social media. When you and I would get home, we'd hop off the school bus, whatever problems were at school, they stayed at school. But now that problem is still on the end of your phone, whether it's some bullying or it's a conversation that hasn't gone well or a text or a snap or, you know, whatever it is. It goes to bed with you. The phone's beside the bed. The first thing you do when you wake up, check the phone.
Yeah.
So there is no isolated time anymore for our kids, and I think it's doing some damage to their ability to self-regulate. Like self-regulation is something that sounds easy, but it's fucking hard, and it's hard enough for us, right, as adults, let alone going through some of the most difficult years and the most years when you're most impressionable. And then having this whole other stream of thoughts and emotions coming through this device that's just with you. It's basically now plugged into us, right? Like a mini cyborg that we feel that what's on the end of the phone sometimes is more important than what's right in front of us. You know, it can be a beautiful morning. You know, you can be sitting there with people that you love, but if something comes through that phone, it then controls the next minutes, hours, days of how you feel.
Yeah.
And I guess, I'd be really keen to, to flush that out further with you, knowing that I'm going through it firsthand. We all go through it still as adults, but also try and look at ways to sort of give some support to these beautiful little humans that are trying to navigate their way through this crazy time, and use it and try and use the social media then as a platform to do good with them. And like you said, it's about that ripple effect. If we can, instead of our youth inflaming others and inflaming themselves, what happens if we can give them enough armory and enough sort of support and education that they can not overreact and they can actually use that platform to send a nice message and try and combat things instead of just getting embroiled in this online argument, which to me is a little bit like road rage, right? It's easy to be angry when when you're not face to face, but you'd find that most things can be resolved face to face. But when there's isolation, it seems that it's easier for people to be more dramatic.
Yeah, I think more dramatic, and anger is a powerful, or frustration are powerful emotions that drive people to action. Mm-hmm. And I guess what people sometimes I think have, and I've personally as well, have difficulty in dealing with is, potentially sadness and shame and expectations and all those feelings that come with, dealing with everyday situations of life, which, as you said earlier, our young humans of the world, they are inexperienced. They're not equipped with the skills or knowledge or wisdom of years under their belt on how to best deal with those things. And I think there's a lot to be said with, and obviously we're into the gym environment, so physical activity.
Yeah.
But there's a lot to be said in physical, activities. I guess my vision would be to have some kind of, like the American system, they've got like their vacation camps where they've got high ropes, low ropes, canoeing.
Yeah.
But then also, there's a music program, not necessarily a band camp, but, like expression through music, expression through dance, martial arts, like a school of arts as well, so that it doesn't matter how you individually can, or so that you could potentially explore other. So a facility where you can explore which potential avenue might work best for you, and how does your soul react best to whatever stimulus. And then once you learn about yourself, I think your ability to deal with external influences becomes a lot easier, and learning how to self-regulate and go, oh, why am I getting upset about that? Why has that triggered me like this? As opposed to, you have done this. Understanding your end.
Some ownership.
And if we can kind of create that culture and that level of understanding about yourself, it's only better, right? Like that ripple effect is endless, because you're carrying that skill with you throughout life. Your family interactions improve, your friendships improve, your work interactions get better. It all starts internally. But when in life do you kind of get given that opportunity until you're at rock bottom, right? Like, and hopefully, I think, well, David Goggins said it as well, as we said earlier, you do need to experience those ultra lows. You do need to experience some crap in your life. Like, you have to. It's just, that's the rite of passage of life. If you haven't, no, everybody has in some way, shape or form. But if we can try and give our young people an opportunity to self-reflect before they hit those rock bottom moments.
That's it, to give them some tools so that they know when they can see it coming as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the impacts aren't as widespreading, the duration is shorter. How they use that experience as fuel, they'll learn to use that experience as fuel rather than just fall apart and bring everything else around them fall apart. So I think that's what I'm passionate about. That's kind of my next chapter in my life that I'm working towards. And I'm looking forward to seeing where that goes, particularly with your mentorship. And I genuinely feel, and it's coming from a place of love and wanting to enhance connections in the world, because I think that's what I was particularly missing as a young person, and even now in life. Like, gosh, if I could just go out and hang out at a camp for 2 weeks with a bunch, like what we do at gym, right? Like that's our fun camp. Like we have a laugh.
Well, you're there because you want to be, right?
Yeah, like it's fun. We laugh. We share stories.
Yeah.
That's what makes our soul happy. I love reading and I love dancing and I love music. Like I love all these other things too. And it's just giving the young people an opportunity to find what it is that they love, what they connect with, how to connect with themselves and each other. But yeah, so we'll see where that goes.
Yeah, I'm excited about that. Really, really excited because, the next generation is going to redefine what our future looks like when you and I are just standing back watching. And I guess so that groundwork needs to start now. So coming back to you, tell me about where you're at right now and what's your driver, what's your why right now? What's on the goal for the next 6 to 12 months for Elene?
What's my why? Actually, before we launch into that, can I just share with you a story about human connection?
Absolutely.
Can we come back to that question?
Yeah. Go for it.
So with human connection, I think one of the things that continuously drives me is something that, not an incident, I won't call it an incident, but something that really touched me a few years ago. So my husband at the time and I were driving home. It was winter. I'm not sure if I've told you this story. So I was driving home one night, late at night, maybe 9:30 or 10 o'clock at night. It was a winter night with my husband at the time. And we were driving along the road, which was near the freeway, and we could see something walking towards us on our side of the road. Like, what is going on here? And so as we pulled up to the lights to turn, I noticed it was an old man. I'm like, this is a bit strange. And I could just see there was something wrong with his knee, and it looked like it was bleeding. And so I'm like, so my husband at the time was like, let's just go home. I'm like, no, we need to circle back around because there's something going on.
Yeah.
So we circled back around, pulled over, wind my window down. I'm like, hey, is everything okay? And so this old man maybe would have been 70 years old, probably, if I had to take a guess at the time. And he's like, I've got to go. I'm just on my way to see my son. And then he just kept on walking in the opposite direction of the car that we were traveling in. I'm like, that was definitely an odd encounter. Like, it's 10 o'clock at night. Who's going walking? And he had a T-shirt and shorts on, and it was winter. I'm like, this isn't right. So in that short kind of space of, like, I was just sitting there stunned for a minute, he had then walked up the off-ramp to a huge motorway. So he was walking just from the street, and he had just turned onto a freeway, which was 5 lanes of traffic on both sides. And I'm like, this man, there's something seriously wrong. So I just hopped on the phone to the police. I'm like, look, there's a man, I don't know what's wrong, but there's something wrong. He's just walked onto the freeway and somebody needs to come and get him, essentially. And they're like, okay, yep, just where are you? We'll come and find you. I'm like, and in that kind of 45-second period, I then noticed him to walk across the motorway. And then, and lucky it was 10 o'clock at night, so there wasn't too many cars. He walked across the 5 lanes of traffic, jumped over the concrete divider, and then kept on going along the other 5 lanes of traffic.
My God.
Yeah. And then I could see him go down the off-ramp on that side of the freeway. So I knew exactly where he was going to end up. And I said to Sadidi, I'm like, just let's go A, B, C, D, and we'll go and get him. And so in that kind of 5 minute of us, hightailing it around to jump back on the freeways, get off to go and find him, we ended up pulling up, And I said to City, call the police and tell them where we are. I'm going to get the old man. So we pulled over and I got out of the car this time. Because I had my boot, I've got a RAV that the boot opens, and I was just kind of sitting on there waiting to come up to me because I knew like he was walking in our direction this time. I'm like, oh, hey, mate. I'm like, where? Because he actually told me he was going up to the coast to see his son. I'm like, oh, we're driving up to the coast right now, but I've just got a flat tire. I'm like, can you just help us for a second? Like, and I can give you a lift to the coast if that's the direction that you're traveling in. And he's like, oh, yeah, okay, I can do that. So I was just like stalling him for like 5 minutes, knowing that my ex was on the phone to the police to tell them where we were. And so in the meantime, the police ended up coming and he was like, so what ended up happening was this man had inadvertently escaped from a nursing home at 12 o'clock that day. So it was now nearly 11 o'clock at night. For 11 hours, he had been walking. So he was like, I can't even remember what suburb he had escaped from, but he had walked something like 40 or 50 kilometers in like that 12-hour period. He had fallen. And when I got to him close up, it wasn't just his knee that was bleeding. It was like he had fallen significantly and he was limping too. And the police actually told me that he had gotten out of the nursing home. He had dementia. And even to this day, it makes me so emotional because what kind of world do we live in that a man, like, it could have been my grandfather, it could have been your grandfather.
Yeah. And we drive by.
People were just driving by the entire day. Even, I'm sure there would have been cars before we went. We were on a main road, like two lanes either way of traffic at 10 o'clock at night. It was a Sunday night. And it just made me so sad that night that that's how the human race has developed, that we can just drive by and not even care.
We pretend we don't see.
People just turn a blind eye. It's not my problem. It's, they just shove it under the rug and don't think about it.
Yeah.
And, that moment, I guess I've always been that way. I've always cared about others. And maybe that's why you mentioned to me, which is a lovely compliment. Thank you. My energy. Yeah. I guess when you've been through difficulties in life and particularly bullying, you don't want others to, you want to make sure other people feel loved and cared for. Yeah. And I guess that's one of my core values is unconditional love for anybody. It doesn't matter who you are, where you come from. Like, you're worthy of love and you're worthy to be cared for. And just because I'm a stranger, it doesn't mean that I won't care for you. And I hate the fact that some people can take their lives and think that they don't matter in the world, because they do. Like, everybody matters and there are people that care. You just haven't found the right people yet.
Yeah, well, that old man, he was lucky because you found him, and it's just it shows you the depth of where we're getting to, you know, where people will just disregard things for their own. I guess it's not selfishness is not the right word, but we're so self-absorbed, aren't we? And we think everything that we do is so important that we're not looking out for others or looking at how other people might be handling things. And to know that man was allowed to walk around in an incoherent state at that age without anyone, there would have been thousands of people going past him and not one person till you pulled up. It's kind of, and look, I don't think that's just in our culture here in Australia. I think that unless you're, like you said earlier, unless you're in a small village, it's kind of like the story. It's the story of where we've got to, you know.
Yeah, and has that stemmed from a culture where, I mean, I know we're fearful potentially of our safety, but really is it, I guess in Australia, potentially it's not as bad as other places in the world. Yeah. But our humanity has just it's like it's gone.
Yeah.
Where we've stopped caring for each other and being respectful of each other. And
Well, if that old man was walking around in a small community that were more connected, that would have never happened.
no.
It just shows the disconnection and the size and where we're all at. It's an awesome story, and it's a really good reflection, and all the more reason to try and keep people connected, and also get back to the basics, about what life really is, and that connection and that feeling of caring. It's huge. So thank you. That was beautiful.
Thanks. But yeah, that was something that's always been in, like, that'll stay with me for life.
Yeah.
I guess whenever I'm like, one day I'll tell Dimitri that story, and, I hope he, again, talking about, living a life of not fearful,
Correct.
because we can walk around and live a life through a certain lens, but you're closing yourself off to other opportunities or adventures or experiences or ability to help others.
Yeah.
If you're always scared, or you don't think you're good enough, or you don't think you're pretty enough, or whatever it is that you are using as that self misbelief, whatever it is that you're telling yourself, like, it's just a negative thought that you have the ability to control and actively. I'm not saying it right. I've lost it.
I think a fearful life is too compromised to be called a life. I think that there is a lot of fear out there. There's a lot of pressure coming sideways and from above to make people feel perhaps fear in a lot of ways. But yeah, I think if you can remove that, not just from our kids and our adolescents, but from the adults, and give people the confidence to lead a more adventurous life, to become who they really are, regardless of fucking other people's opinions. I think that that's the main reason for us as humans. But to live a life of fear, to me, on every level is, well, it's like a prison, right?
Yeah.
We make our own prisons by choices.
We do, and it's a shame that, as children, we laugh, we be silly, you take risks. You're not afraid of getting hurt. You'll climb up that tree, or you'll say that thing without knowing,
And you'll make up friends better. Like if you get upset, you'll make up, right?
Yeah.
Quick.
Yep.
It's over. It's done.
Yeah. You just move on.
Yeah.
And I think as we get older, that sense of fear grows, and then we stop being silly for fear of judgment. We stop seeking adventure for fear of failure. We stop sharing what we think for fear of judgment.
Yeah.
Fear is such a powerful limiter in life. And if we can try and set ourselves up for success to overcome those fears, and we train to overcome those success. So I think that's what we do at gym, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm going to lift that weight. I'm about to go for a personal best. I've never lifted that weight before, but I'm going to try. And I need a spotter. Adam, can you come and spot me do this chest press?
Yeah.
Like, I think potentially I might fail, but I'm going to give it a crack, and somebody's going to be there to help me if I don't do it. And if we can replicate that in all aspects of our life, that's an amazing life to lead, because you'll get rid of that fear. You'll go for that job promotion, or you'll ask that girl out, or you'll say that funny joke, or you'll act silly and feel great and then have one of those laughing uncontrollable fits. Like, you'll feel more enriched.
You'll be yourself.
You'll be yourself and lose that sense of fear.
Yeah.
And I think fear of judgment is probably the biggest limiting self-belief that most people are dealing with in life. And the minute we realize that we're all just human and nobody's perfect, and everybody's got their flaws. That's when you see the beauty in everybody and yourself.
Mm. Yeah, the beauty's in the cracks sometimes.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you tell me about you. What's happening with you now, and what are you excited about, and what's the challenges for you personally, business, with the kid, beautiful Dimitri, everything. Tell me what you're doing for the next 12 months.
What am I doing? My life is probably going to be just as chaotic. So I've been hoping for all these years that it gets to a point where life settles. But what I've realized is that life doesn't settle.
Yep.
Life just happens. And I'm grateful for that. Like, I think it's when you look at the glass half full, right? Like, and I went to a Tony Robbins event a few months ago in Sydney, which was great. I walked on fire. Walked on coal. Yeah, it was
really
crazy.
Did Tony Robbins walk on fire too?
Yeah, he did it. Wow. He led it. So
wow.
Yeah, it was kind of like cult is kind of the word I want to use, but it's not in the sense of the word that I see in my head when I say the word cult. It was like the craziest vibe. Like everybody, like he got an entire stadium of people in this mindset where it was incredible. And the entire stadium, like he had, I think 30 or 40 lanes of hot coals.
Wow.
And people we were all walking over it. Like it was mind over matter. It was, so it's called fire walking.
Yeah.
Incredible experience, incredible. But again, like we had to do the work. So that was on, I think, day 2 of this 4-day workshop. And so we couldn't just, the minute you get on there, go walk on coal. Because we're all we're talking about fear, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, and even going into this event, I was like, oh my God, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it. This is crazy. Like, I'm not going to walk on hot coal. I'm going to get burnt. Like, who in their right mind would do that?
Mm.
And then just, there's so much to be said with just going with the flow and just trusting in other people sometimes and trusting in the process.
Yeah.
And losing that fear of, doubt, I guess.
Mm.
But yeah, he managed to get everybody into this mental state through meditation and so chanting and breathing. And so that essentially we were all saying to ourselves that the hot coals was cool moss. So anybody that's gone to a Tony Robbins event done this will know what I'm saying. So now I have dreams about cool moss. But yeah, so as that moment where you're taking control of your breathing and your mind and you're telling yourself of the hot coal in front of you is cool moss, and then you literally are just walking over the coal and you're like, and you can't lose your mind connection. And then so until like somebody actually has to physically stop you at the end of the coal when you're off the coal so that you can wipe your feet, because you're that much in of a state you actually don't realize that you've finished walking.
Wow.
It was an incredible experience. And I think in terms of, I guess, my journey so far, it was quite good reflection, because I guess that's how I've been up until now. It's just allowing yourself to get into that mind frame, that state of mind that where you want something really bad, and you're working hard to achieve it, and you want to actively change something in your life. And for me, that's been not only my body, but my mind, my career path, working hard for Dimitri and setting up my new home now that I'm divorced. So I've got lots of life changes going on this year. I've had 3 surgeries. I've lost my grandmother. I've had a lot go on this year.
Yeah.
And yeah, I've realised like life just doesn't stop. But I should be grateful to be living. Like, wake up tomorrow, that's a win.
Yeah.
Like, wake up tomorrow, that's a win. And so, yeah, that Tony Robbins event was crazy, and it just kind of puts you on a high and a positive mindset. But then you're like, wow, I've walked on coal. Man, I could do anything.
Mm.
Like, it can, your mind is malleable. Like, you control it. And so now I'm going down this journey of, wanting to educate myself and experience different things. I've always been a really conservative person, and I guess, now that I've kind of got my body to where I'm happy with it and I've got more confidence. I know I've got more confidence now when it comes to, people and men and, you know, even now I'm doing Latin dancing. Like I'm enjoying just dancing. That's another thing that I've discovered is good for my soul.
Wow.
I love music. I love the Latino music. It just seems to connect with me. And the minute I walk into the dance studio, I'm just smiling. Like even during our class, like, and half of us can't even dance. So we're stuffing up the steps left, right, and center. But I just enjoy it. And I think that's what life is when you allow yourself to discover a bit about when you allow yourself to discover bits about yourself that you don't even know exist. It's such an amazing feeling. And you get on this natural high. And I guess that's when you glow, right? And your energy changes and it's a ripple effect. And I think often in kind of relationships, whether it be a parental relationship or an intimate relationship or friendship circle, you're often always, you know, not pointing the finger, but I think our natural instinct is to go, you, like what in the situation or conversations, like your default is to defend yourself and go to the other person. Whereas when you're in a good state, it's easier to hold things internally. And that's how we should all be acting. It should all be, what have I done in this situation to make it this way?
Yeah.
What have I contributed to this situation to make it this way, and take ownership? And then once you practice doing that in all situations, it becomes so much easier to implement in all other parts of your life. And I guess for us in gym, right, like we've learned how to do that with our body. We've learned how to do that with our nutrition and our mind as well, you know, because it takes discipline and commitment. So we're building that repertoire of muscles in our head.
Yeah.
But emotionally, it's the toughest set of exercises to do because it's, you know, a chemical response in your body that you've got no control of. But the more that you learn to reel it in, the easier it all becomes. So I guess the next part of my journey is to continue this self-reflection path. And yeah, maybe it's my midlife crisis, potentially. But I'm glad to be doing it. It's tough work. Like I think I mentioned to you before, you know, on the way here, I was just listening to whatever song Spotify was throwing at me, and, you know, up popped some love songs. And, you know, that made me reflect on my marriage that has just ended, my 12-year marriage and 16 years with that person. And it kind of took me on that wave of emotion. And I think if I can potentially give any piece of advice to anybody listening right now, is try and use tools that help you get through those difficult moments in life. And so for me, I'm a visual person. And so whenever I've had a challenge, it could be emotional, it could be physical, it could be my eating, whatever it is, I've learned to visualize a wave. So I can see whatever it is about to come my way that's going to trigger some kind of emotion in me. And most of the time it might be sadness. I'm getting better with it at anger, but particularly sadness now. I've picture a wave. So yeah, I'm going to become sad in this next few minutes, really sad. And it used to really affect me to the point where, you know, I'd probably burst out in tears and I'd be emotional, and, you know, my whole day would be a write-off. Whereas now I can, like, a wave comes and goes in 20 seconds now, right? Or 10 seconds. So I'm just like, the wave is coming. I'm going to feel it. It's going to peak, and then it's going to go.
Wow.
And I've been actively trying to teach myself that.
Self-regulation.
That's what it's self-regulation.
Yeah.
I didn't think about it like that.
It's so important. So hard.
So hard, especially when the emotion's anger.
Yeah.
But it's like a muscle. You've got to work it. You've got to practice it. And give yourself credit for doing the work as well. You might not necessarily be where you want to be, but it's equally important to celebrate actually doing the work, because not a lot of people, you know, step up and want to do it. They just take the path of least resistance and they never change. never really feel fulfilled.
Yeah. Yeah, I think being accountable for your own faults and your own flaws and just trying to become a better human, really, which is what this is all about, right? We're all just trying to evolve, I think, instead of being in a holding pattern. I think as painful as evolving is, really it's the only option to try and lead a successful life physically and mentally for yourself. You have to continually evolve. And I think for the people that don't, life sort of stands still a little. I find when I reflect and I look back on relationships and people and all sorts of things, business as well, and if things don't continue to evolve, it's not a journey anymore. We are humans. We're here to adventure, to have a journey and to make the mistakes, to fix things, to fix ourselves mostly. And I think the biggest journey is with ourselves, right? The most important conversation is with ourselves, and how can you really honestly want to hold other people accountable to things if you can't hold yourself accountable to simple disciplinary things that you should be doing in your own life? And I think that's the key, not so much to happiness, but maybe to joy, is to setting those little patterns and those little goals for us to be good individual humans that then reflects and ripples out into everyone else. So I agree. I'm sharing that with you, and that's my journey. Definitely trying to be less reactive. I'm not trying to fix things, even if too quickly, if I even, and jump out and go, oh, hey, I've got a solution. Sometimes I'm just trying to take a little bit more time to think it through and to measure myself in perhaps what my response might be, instead of just both in my personal life, in my relationships with my kids, and also in business, just trying to be a little bit more stoic in my approach to, it's not always what you blurt that helps you. Sometimes it's what you hold in that helps you more, like you said, and self-regulate it, and then it comes out nicer. So it's better for everyone. So that's my journey as well, amongst a gazillion other things, but that's my little thing. So I just want to say it's been beautiful to have you and to have this chat. And I'd love to get you back in 6 or 12 months and see how you and I have, what's happened in the meantime, and how, you and Dimitri are going, and how your new life is starting, and, how everything's going for you, and also for you and I maybe to talk to amongst ourselves, and then maybe let other people know about what we will do as far as trying to set up some type of fearless hearts type scenario for our young ladies out there who need a greater support base and need strong women like yourself to give them a loving atmosphere and guidance to try and help them through, so they can be better for their kids and their friends and their family as well. So, but it all starts with us. So massive thank you. It's beautiful to have you. And really, it's been an absolute pleasure. And I hope you have an awesome Chrissy. And that, you set those goals. Don't stop doing what you're doing, because you're amazing. The energy, I'll come back to that, is just with you is the most thing that it's intoxicating for other people, because of the way that you have the ability to excite people and to inspire people. So I guess finishing off, just don't stop being you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.